What up, y'all? This is Patrick Hayes, and today what I want to talk about is how to deal with toxic people, how to deal with difficult people, especially in regards to the holiday season. You know, a lot of us have different, events, community events we might be going to, and we may be anticipating running into that person that we don't want to run into. This is especially pertinent for people that have toxic family members that know that, when they're at that dinner table this year, they're going to have to sit right across from or next to that person that really irks them. They don't really know how to deal with that situation or how to prepare for it properly. So I want to talk a little bit about that, and I want to give some really, really powerful advice that I've uncovered and discovered over the last decade for how to deal with these people and how to prepare for it properly. So the first thing is identifying these toxic relationships, identifying the relationship dynamics that you have with other people or these specific people that are toxic, that you feel apprehensive about, that kind of irk you and that make the engagement with your family or in the engagement with your workplace at these holidays events something that you feel apprehensive about. So you want to identify those people. And it's probably pretty easy because when you think about like what don't you want to experience or who do you not want to run into, it's like boom, pops right up into your mind because there's a heavy charge. But it's important to be able to identify them and actually think about it in a strategic way. So identify, who are these people? Maybe it's my, Uncle Hal or whatever it is. So Uncle Hal is kind of a douchebag and he says douchey stuff to me every time, we hang out at the dinner table. So my nose is itching really bad right now. So I want to prepare for how to deal with Uncle Hal. So first I identify Uncle Hal. He's the jerk, right? Now, the first thing to do after identifying that is to be honest with yourself and admit that this is a toxic dynamic. It's not just Uncle Hal. I have a part to play in this also, right? And my part is any negativity that I bring to the idea of this relationship. So even though Uncle Hal might be the one that's more of the jerk, he says the jerky things. He's the one that's being judgmental. He's the one that's, doing the things that are not cool, right? Even though that may be true, any negative emotions or negative perspectives that I have some sort of charge within me regarding, is my responsibility. And this is something that I'm bringing to the dynamic. This is my toxic or difficult ingredient. And this is something that we need to own in order to empower ourselves to shift the dynamic or to shift our experience of the dynamic. So the first thing is to identify who it is that we have the negative dynamic with, who is the toxic person, right? And the second thing is to identify that it's a toxic dynamic that I am bringing ingredients to, right? And that I have a part to play in. So once we've done that, the next step is to find a positive way of interpreting this dynamic. Find a positive way of interpreting the relationship. So Uncle Hal is a jerk. He always says demeaning things to me. How can I look at the dynamic between me and Hal as something that I can positively generate from? Something that can help me in some way. Here's a great one. This is a relatively universal perspective that we can take to any situation that's difficult. And this situation is an opportunity for me to grow. It's an opportunity for me to be in the face of something that's difficult, uncomfortable, and for me to respond in a way that's positive, right? So it's an opportunity for me to grow. So I can thank Uncle Hal for pushing my comfort zones and giving me the opportunity to bench press my resiliency until I build more resiliency so that these kinds of things won't bother me as much. And so this is a great universal tool we can use. But the idea is to look for as many different ones as you can. Maybe it's an opportunity for you to heal some sort of issue with your family. Maybe it's an opportunity for you to feel compassion for somebody else that is always in a negative state. Maybe he's always in a grumpy negative state because he's depressed about his life. So maybe you can ask yourself, well, you know what? What is it that makes him so depressed? Why is he so angry? And when you start uncovering why he would be angry, maybe you can feel a little compassion. And maybe this then can be an opportunity for you to express more compassion. You'd be surprised how the shift in your dynamic or the shift in your own energy can shift the dynamic between you and another person that have, say, like a rivalry, right? It's amazing how things can shift. You'd be surprised. I remember I used to have a negative dynamic that I would get into with my brother from time to time. It's not that common. We typically get along pretty well. But there's a pattern that would come up from time to time. And it would happen kind of the same way, where we would go back and forth on something, and then one of us would get fired up, and then the other one would get even more fired up, and it would spin out of control. But what I realized was, before I went to family situation, I said to myself, well, I know that if this comes up this time, I'm not going to get fired up. And if he gets fired up, I'm just going to be extra nice to him. And sure enough, it did happen. And I was extra nice to him. And to this day, he still talks about that moment where he's like, you know what? That really shifted things for me. Like, when you responded that way, I realized how ridiculous it was that I was acting so fired up and getting so angry about this. And, it brought things back into perspective, and it created a new pathway for us to relate to each other in a different way. So there's a great example of how this works. When we're able to relate to the situation differently and then respond to the situation differently, it can shift the dynamic. So how do we do that? How do we prepare ourselves to do that? Because that's a difficult thing. I mean, it's good to be able to look at it positively and frame it in positive terms. And that's really easy kind of when you're on your own, because, maybe it isn't easy, but it's a lot easier when you're on your own than when you're actually facing it head on. So how do we prepare to face it head on in a way that ups our chances for success? And this is through doing something that I call priming. Actually, I don't know if he coined the term, but Tony Robbins talks about priming. And priming is a super, super powerful technique. So priming is in this context, anticipating the potential difficult situations that you could run into. So before you go to dinner, Uncle Hal's going to be there. So I'm thinking about how to positively frame the situation. And then the next step is I'm going to anticipate being in a difficult situation with them, and I'm going to visualize myself responding to it differently. So I might go through, 5 or 10 different imaginations of how he could come off in a ugly or brash or insensitive or cruel way. And then I'm going to imagine myself responding to that in the way that I'd like to respond, in a positive way. And by doing that, I'm priming myself. So I've already seen myself succeed 10 or 15 times inside my head. See, what people normally do is when they're anticipating something that's undesirable, when they're anticipating going into a situation where they're going to face somebody that they don't like or that is difficult to deal with, they're kind of irked about it, and they don't want to do it, and they're cycling through their head actually all of the things that are going to piss them off. They're thinking about oh, he's going to say this, and this is going to bother me, and I hate it when he does that, and I hate it when he does this. And so they're actually negatively priming themselves. So then when they actually walk into the situation, it's like the second they say something, it's almost like they're even oversensitive, because they've already kind of gotten in arguments inside their head with this person before they've even seen them. So the second the person says something, it's like they're already jumping down their throat, right? So the idea is you're doing the reverse. You're positively priming yourself to respond with the kind of response that you intend to respond with, that you want to respond with, in order to shift the dynamic, in order to at least play your part in creating more of a healthy dynamic between you and the person. So these are the basic tools I use. They can be brought into many different areas of life. So this isn't just about the holidays. And priming isn't just about working with people. Priming can be used for any situation that you're dealing with in general, any difficult situation. And actually can be really useful to prime in the morning, just anticipating any misfortunes or mishaps that happen throughout the day. You could say that, there's a chance that something could come along today that could be really annoying or frustrating, or could really suck. And so what I'm doing is I'm spending my morning thinking, imagining, oh, something came up that sucked, and I responded to it well. I knew how to flip it into my favor and think of it positively. So priming is something that can be used, across the board with a lot of different things. So I encourage you to explore this. So explore using these tools. Identify what it is, admit that you have your part in it, positively frame your relationship with the situation or the person, and then prime yourself to respond well in the situation, especially right before you walk into a situation that you know is going to be difficult. And I guarantee you, if you really put some time and effort into practicing these different steps, you will have a much more successful engagement with these toxic or difficult people the next time you engage with them. So thanks so much for tuning in. This is Patrick Hayes. Like, subscribe, share with your friends, and I'll talk to you next time. One love. If you liked the video you just saw and you want to support me in bringing more content like that to you, donate to my Patreon page. There's a link pinned in the comments below, and when you donate to the page, you get access to all sorts of cool giveaways like exclusive content, free music downloads, monthly group chats with me, and more. Now, every single donation that comes in goes directly to improving the quality and the quantity of my content. So thanks so much for your support, and I'll see you on the flip side.